Hello, and thanks for tuning in to episode number one of Coffee Discussion slash podcast with Jay. I'm not exactly sure what I want to call this series yet, and so that's just kind of how we're going to kick this off. Nonetheless, today's episode is going to be about UFO Dripper, its inception, its progress, and how we became to be where we are today. And what a story it's going to be. It's going to be a wild ride because it really has been. And so buckle up. Story of UFO Dripper really, we have to go all the way back to North Carolina, back when I was still hosting those weekly coffee tasting sessions. So the idea behind my weekly tasting sessions was for me to introduce specialty coffee to people that have never had specialty coffee before, for people that have never had a chance to try specialty coffee before. And that's what I did for nearly 2 years. And while I was doing that, I remember a barista reached out. Someone named Kenzie reached out to my Instagram messages, and they said, "Hey, is there a spot available for this weekend?" And this was at a time when I would offer spots on Instagram stories. No, this was during when I was utilizing Eventbrite, an event hosting slash scheduling website. It was basically a ticketing website, and I would throw up tickets for free, and people would sign up through there. And this person, Kenzie, had messaged me saying that they want to join, and I said, "Yeah, sure." But I remember their message to me was a little bit kind of flat, I guess. They didn't seem very excited to show up. And I remember just feeling a little bit off by that because, the people that wanted to show up were very, very enthusiastic about specialty coffee, or at least they were very enthusiastic about wanting to learn and wanting to taste and wanting to join me at my little apartment in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, to discuss coffee and taste coffee with me and other strangers for 2 hours. Nonetheless, I said, "Yeah, there's a spot available." And so Kenzie showed up. And mind you, I wasn't even sure if Kenzie was actually going to show up or not because I had no idea who they were. This is kind of how these tastings went. Was they were all complete strangers that I invited into my own home for the love of specialty coffee. That was really all it was. Anyway, I got to meet Kenzie. I remember how enthusiastic and how passionate Kenzie was about specialty coffee. He had brought me this OG, it was called the Umicot WDT tool, this spinning 3D printed distribution tool that he had printed out for me as a small gift. And I remember just being so thankful and also just excited to have found another specialty coffee nerd slash specialty coffee lover in town. And so, yeah, the session went great, and I kept on staying in touch with Kenzie because Kenzie had reached out saying that he wanted to work as a barista or just have a position over at Black and White Coffee Roasters, and told me that he already applied before multiple times and got no response. And so he was basically trying to see if I could help him out, right? Seeing if I could, utilizing my connection to Cal Ramage over at Black and White, the previous owner, now the head of coffee since their acquisition to, I forget what the big brand is, but nonetheless, yeah. So he was just trying to see if I could get him a job, and I remember telling Kenzie, "Look, my friendship doesn't have that kind of pull, but I am sure I can at least get you an interview." And so that's what happened. I got Kenzie an interview, and Kenzie, of course, showcased his coffee skills very, very well through that interview and got a position as a barista at Black and White, and the rest is history. Well, until he reached out to me saying, "Jay, do you want to make a dripper?" I did not want to make a dripper at all, and that's because there was a period around 3 years ago when it felt like there was a new dripper on the market every single day. I mean, like literally every single day. It felt very, very toxic, especially as someone who is very passionate about pour overs, and especially as someone who is very passionate about drippers and tools. I'd already owned tens of different drippers, which is the reason why Kenzie had reached out to me in the first place, requesting for a collaboration on this new project that he was thinking of. And I remember, like, I immediately told him no. I said, "Why? Why would you want to make a dripper when a V60 and an Oria already exist?" A V60 is my all-time favorite conical dripper, and Oria is my all-time favorite flat bottom dripper. And so to me, I already had best of both worlds and really didn't see a reason why another dripper should exist. And so I immediately told Kenzie no. And then Kenzie was very adamant. He was very persistent, which I'm, of course, now very thankful that he was. And he asked, "Well, Jay, at least could you consult on this project?" And so I said, "Yes, sure." And because I'm such a passionate coffee person, because I was such a passionate coffee nerd and had love for the community and love for people, I just was like, "Yeah, dude, let's check it out. Let's see what idea you have." And so I met up with Kenzie at a local cafe, one of my favorite cafes of all time, Fountain Coffee and Kitchen in Morrisville, North Carolina. And Kenzie presented this idea to me of an 80-degree wall angle dripper. And I was very, very intrigued. He presented science and he presented logic, and in theory, it all made sense and it all should work out to be something that was capable of brewing really, really tasty cups of coffee with clarity, texture, acidity, and sweetness, and all of it. Literally the best of both worlds. And it was just a matter of how we were going to execute on the idea. And initially, it was quite terrible. I mean, the design was just not good at all. Matter of fact, I, you know what? I should go grab some of those so that I can show you guys while we discuss. Oh man. Okay, how am I gonna do this? We're gonna make it work. Bear with me, okay? Crap. All right, so this, this, this was the very first ever UFO. This is what Kenzie brought to me the first time we met up. It was this hideous thing that he had 3D printed and presented to me. It had no ribs, no air channels, and yeah, it was just this. And he said, "Do you think this will work?" And I said, "Maybe." So I took it home and I started testing, and I quickly realized that it wasn't going to work. It had its flaws, as in the idea that we had originally had was this no bypass conical brewer that was also 80 degrees in wall angle. That way we can reduce the bed depth, and which is going to then provide more even extraction due to the bed depth being thinner, so the energy of water is able to penetrate the bed deeper and provide better agitation and transfer energy, which is, of course, then all bringing it back home to further promoting even extraction, right? But it didn't work. It didn't work. It had a lot of issues. And going from this to UFO Dripper that is now, it feels surreal looking at these two, because this is where we started and this is where we ended up. So we started here, and then we realized I was like, look, there's no way for the filter to just kind of sit unless you put it on top of a server or a carafe, and then you rinse the filter paper, right? And so we decided to, what do we do? No, at first we were having a ton of issues with warpage, right? It was warping a lot, and so we decided we need supports to perhaps mitigate that. And so we added these support structures here, and it didn't work again. It was still warping. And so we took the design to something that was a little more flat, something like this, and it still didn't work. And so we tried this design. I mean, there were so many prototypes that I can't even count. We tried so many things. We lifted this up because we realized that if we lifted this up, then the filter can sit inside and we can rinse without having to put it on the server and all that. But it's still warped, and it was really really tough for us to test because it was always just constantly warping. And then that's when we met Raymond over at FDM by Optical Blitz. When during preliminaries over at US Brewers Cup Championships, which I ended up winning that year, the prelims, because I chose to not compete at nationals and just decided to move to Korea to pursue UFO Dripper production. But that's where I met Raymond, and Raymond was the one who gave us the idea and basically told us that we can print Triton, well, a derivative of Triton, which is Color Fab HT. And so Kenzie and I got to work. We bought a new 3D printer that was going to print just strictly that material, because food safety with 3D printing is incredibly challenging, and we did our best to kind of work around that. But even then, we had to include food safety notices, because it just with the parting lines in 3D printing, it's incredibly difficult for you to manage the bacteria growth, and so you have to pour boiling water over it and yada yada yada, right? And it's still a challenge. Nonetheless, we got to something that we were able to actually brew with without warping and really test, which was this. This was one of the first 3D printed Triton material UFO drippers. And we tested so many different versions of the base designs, testing airflow, testing so many different things. And I came to realize that the whole no bypass 80-degree conical dripper thing just wasn't going to work. And so we decided that we're going to have to add ribs. So we did. So we added ribs, and with ribs still posed the same exact issue that I had with a traditional V60, which was that it was never going to be consistent from brew A to brew B to brew C to brew D to brew E. And that is because the filter was going to make uneven, and it was never going to make the same exact amount of contact with the walls of the dripper. As in, when you pour water over the filter inside of a V60, the filter is going to make full contact with parts of the wall, and parts of the filter are going to be lifted up by the ribs. But that just means that there's going to be inconsistent airflow every single brew. So I was very frustrated by this, and I really wanted a consistent conical dripper, which a V60 is not. And so while thinking about this, I remember I thought of this idea around midnight. And I said, what if instead of ribs that protrude, we dig backwards and invert the ribs and create air channels? And so I thought I was a genius. I seriously thought I was a genius. And so I remember calling Kenzie at midnight and texting Kenzie at midnight going, dude, this is it. We got to test this. With airflow, with air channels, there's going to be blocks that the filters sit on top of, which means that it's going to provide consistent level of airflow every single time, because the source of airflow is behind the filter, right? So I thought I was some sort of a genius. And this is when we came up with this design. We put air channels. And then we realized that this was also not the greatest design. And so we moved over to a two-piece design. like this. And it was exactly what I was hoping for, a consistent conical dripper that was able to promote even extraction through lower bed depth, literally bridging the gap between a conical dripper and a flat bottom dripper because it had the crisp, clean acidity and clarity, yet it also had sweetness and texture of a flat bottom dripper due to having lower bed depth. And so this was it. And I thought I was a genius coming up with this air channel design. I thought I was the only person that had thought of this until I realized CT62 existed. Matter of fact, I even had a CT62 in my cabinet. And I thought CT62 was the first one until I moved to Korea and realized there was another plastic dripper named JR Dripper that had done air channels in a plastic dripper in Trenton in Korea years and years and years ago. No, that nobody knows of because, well, quite frankly, it was quite terrible. It wasn't designed for light roast coffees. It was designed for dark roast coffees. Anyway, there was that, and after UFO surfaced and after air channel concept became very, very popular, everybody was coming at me saying UFO was not the very first dripper to do it. There was a dripper in Taiwan years ago, yada, yada, yada. And you know what? I never knew. And I'd be willing to bet that so many people had no idea that those drippers existed because, well, they weren't very popular. And so, yeah, that's the idea and concept behind the air channels. Nonetheless, Kenzie and I's journey continued, and I remember one of the very first things I did was to set up an Instagram for UFO Dripper because I knew early on that social media was going to be an incredibly important aspect of our business, UFO Dripper. And so UFO Dripper Instagram was set up, and I started to generate content for UFO Dripper. And one day I remember just, I very clearly remember getting a message from Wataru. He said, "Hi, my name is Wataru, and I am a Brewers Cup Championships finalist in Japan. I would really love to use UFO Dripper for Japanese Brewers Cup Championships finals." And I told him, I said, "I can't make that happen because we just couldn't. We just couldn't. We were still very much in the testing stages of, is this something that's actually possible? Does this actually objectively make better cups of coffees than the other drippers do? Is this a concept that I really, really believe in?" And we also didn't have production capabilities. We literally only had one 3D printer at this point that was able to print this. And so I told Wataru, "Hey, Wataru, thank you so much for your interest, but we just can't make it happen for Japanese Brewers Cup Championships finals. But if you win, if you win and you go to Worlds, I will do whatever it takes to get these UFO drippers into your hands." And Wataru said, "Thank you." And a few weeks passed, nothing, nothing, nothing. We're still testing new concepts, brewing, testing different filters, Seabrust filters, other filters as well. And then another message from Wataru had arrived to my inbox, and it said, "Hi, Jay. My name is Wataru, and I won." Yeah, he won. He won. He won Brewers Cup Championships at one of the most difficult countries to win Brewers Cup Championships at, which is Japan. And he reached out saying that he wants to consider the idea of using UFO Dripper on the world stage. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." But I didn't want Wataru to just use the UFO Dripper just because it was this hot new thing, right? I was sick and tired of these marketing tactics by other coffee dripper companies that were just bombarding the industry, bombarding users and via social media marketing and just giving away drippers left and right, just to get exposure. It just didn't click with me. Because keep in mind, when Wataru reached out and when UFO Dripper was in the very, very beginning stages, I was not working in specialty coffee. I was still working in the commercial insurance sector. And so I didn't care. I was not making money from specialty coffee. I mean, not that I'm not that I'm making money now. I've reinvested literally everything back into UFO Dripper. That's a different story. Nonetheless, yeah. So Wataru said he wants to use it, and I told him that, well, I want you to really use it and see if this works for you for your coffee, and if you really believe in this concept as much as we do, then yeah, please take it. But I charged Wataru for every single one of the units that he used on the world stage. We did not give these units to Wataru for free. I charged him. It was because I really hated the trend in the industry of just sponsoring competitors left and right. Right? It just didn't sit right with me. I was really genuinely upset at the industry for this. So yeah, Wataru paid for every single one of the units, and then came Ciberus papers, which Wataru requested. He basically told me that, hey, look, if you can get Cerberus to make UFO specific B3 papers, then I will commit to using UFO Dripper on the world stage. And so I remember contacting Lambert and Joachim over at Cerberus, basically begging them, please, is there any way that we can make this happen? And thankfully, they were very much open to that idea, and they made it happen. And by this time, I'd already moved back to Korea. We'd done a few small launches of the V1, the 3D printed UFO Dripper, which is this right here. We'd made under 100 of these, I believe. I forget exactly how many we made, but it was very, very few pieces. There's very few of these out in the world. And then quickly decided that we have to move over to injection molding. And so I decided to move to Korea to pursue this, to produce UFO Dripper here in Korea. And it was incredibly scary because I've not lived in Korea full time since I was 12. I've been living in the States over half of my life, and it was quite terrifying to even think about life here in Korea. But I knew that I wanted to build a connecting point, something that connected me to my homeland. And one of the ways that I was going to do that was by creating UFO Drippers here in Korea. And so it was something that was very important to me. It's also a country where my entire family lives. I've been away from my family for 13 years, and I wanted to spend some time with my family is a bit of an excuse as well, right? For this move. Also, it was going to help that I got to stay at my parents' place for a couple of months, and so I didn't have to pay rent, which helped a lot while getting set up. Anyway, yeah, so I moved to Korea. I knew no one here. I knew absolutely no one here. I didn't know anyone in the coffee industry here in Korea. Except for, I mean, maybe the mesh guys. One of my friends back home in the States, her family member is one of the founders of Mesh Coffee here in Korea. And then I was also introduced to one of the founders of Fritz Coffee by a dear friend of mine back in the States as well. And so, yeah, I quickly started to make connections and develop myself as a coffee person here in Korea. But it was not easy. Then again, I didn't expect for it to be easy. I didn't want it to be easy. I didn't come here for my life to be easy. I didn't choose this to be easy. But it was a lot harder than I thought. Starting a dripper business, finding a company that was willing and able and within budget of what we had for UFO Dripper injection molding and turning it into a full-blown production product. It was tough. We didn't have a lot of money. We were bootstrapping everything, and it was incredibly challenging. I remember going to so many different factories just to go tour the factories and see if this is something that was possible. And so many people told me that it's not going to be possible. So many people told me that I didn't have enough money. So many people told me that I would have to get a loan. This, yada yada yada. Well, made it happen. Found a company to work with for injection molding, and committed to 2,000 pieces. While all of this was happening, Wataru goes to the world stage to compete. I still remember seeing Wataru live on stage, and it was such an emotional moment for me to see something that I'd created on a stage that I've been watching religiously for so long, because I was so inspired by all these Brewers Cup competitors, right? And they were the reason why I competed. One of my dear friends back home in the States, Kyle Ramage, U.S. Brewers champion, World Brewers Championship finalist. Watching him and his story and other coffee legends and other coffee heroes' journeys was really, really inspiring. And so watching something that I'd created, seeing something that I'd created on the World Brewers Cup Championship stage was incredibly special. It was incredibly emotional. I mean, I'm getting emotional like just even thinking about it, just thinking back on it right now. And then came the semi-finalist announcements. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. List went on, list went on, list went on. And Wataru's name was not getting called. And I remember thinking, yeah, what did I expect? For my dripper to immediately go into semifinals? What did I expect on the first year? I'd basically kind of given up, but of course, it's not over until it's over. And so I kept on waiting, and boom. The last name to be called for semifinalists, Wataru Daka from Japan. He was called last to move on to semifinals, and it was so late at night that I couldn't scream. But yeah, and then I went to bed, and I woke up really, really early in the morning to watch Wataru's routine and announcements. And this time, finalist announcement. And the first finalist to move on was Wataru. Top 6 in the world. Top 6 in the world. And the top 6 in the world, top 6 brewer in the world was using my product. It was surreal. And then he goes and does the finals routine, and then it was now time for the finals ceremony for the awards. 6th place, not Wataru. 5th place, not Wataru. 4th place, not Wataru. 3rd place, not Wataru. It was so early in the morning that I wasn't really sure what was even happening. This is all going down in Chicago. Kenzie's there live in person. I'm in Korea. And yeah, 2nd place, Wataru Daka from Japan. Wataru had just placed 2nd place at World Brewers Cup Championships using my product. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I can't even describe how I felt. It was crazy. It was crazy. And so Wataru helped UFO Dripper get on the maps, get in the radar of so many different home brewers and so many different people in the industry. Wataru proved to the world that UFO Dripper was not just some gimmick. Wataru proved to the world that UFO Dripper was here to stay. Wataru proved that UFO Dripper concept of 80-degree wall angle was something that was actually going to work. Wataru proved to the world, to the entire world, that the UFO Dripper is capable of brewing tasty coffees and placing second place at the world's most prestigious brewing competition amongst the toughest competitors. Wataru helped prove that. And so I was able to go into production and take on this risk as an entrepreneur to pursue full-blown production because it was not cheap. It was very, very expensive. It was the biggest risk I've ever taken in my life. Moving back to a country that I'd been born in, moving back to a country that feels so incredibly foreign to me, yet my entire family lives in. Moving back to a country where people kind of look like me, but I don't look like them because I'm so tall and big, and this language is still a bit foreign to me. Although I speak it, although it's my first language, it no longer feels like it's my first language because I've not spoken it or used it for so damn long. In a place where I don't feel like I fit in due to cultural differences because of having been raised and having spent so much of my development times in the States instead of in Korea. It was terrifying. It was the biggest risk that I've ever taken, not just financially, but just in life in general. But Wataru, him placing second place in the world stage, gave me the courage to continue forwards. It was an incredible amount of affirmation that I should pursue this, that I am on the right track, but I didn't know. The very first batch of UFO Dripper, I produced 2,000 units. And upon inspection, I came to a realization that the injection process in the injection molding had gone wrong and that I wasn't going to be able to sell a single piece of the first run of 2,000 pieces. So I remember taking the defective units back, all 2,000 of them, back over to my injection molding factory and telling them that I can't use one, that I can't even sell, that I can't even sell a single piece. And I remember having to tell Kenzie that because I mean he couldn't do anything. He was over in the States. He was helping design this. He was helping turn ideas into a CAD file that we could actually turn into a product. Kenzie had done his job, and it was my job to execute, and it was my job to go and find a factory to work with. It was my job. He had given me full trust over this part. It was up to me. It was my responsibility, and it felt like I'd screwed up because we couldn't use a single one of those. We couldn't sell any of those. So yeah, I told the factory that it wasn't going to work, and the factory told me that, well, then what are we going to do? And I remember for weeks, thinking, oh, I'm done. I'm done. I lost way too much money with these defective units. 2,000 defective units that, one, I wasn't even going to sell as factory seconds, and two, that I had put so much of the cash that I had into producing. There was no guarantee that the next run, even if it was going to be something that we can fix, was even going to be possible. And so, but I didn't have a choice but to say, okay, let's try to fix this. So the launch of the V2 was delayed by another month or so, I believe. Yeah, I mean, I felt hopeless. Everything, I just felt abysmal. I didn't really know what to do. And I realized that this is just the beginning of a crazy roller coaster ride that I would be on, which would be production here in Korea. Anyway, we get to producing clear V2s, and I hand packed every single one of the units, hand QC'd every single one of the units. I still do, actually. And I'm starting 2026. I'm going to begin streamlining this process a bit more because the company's now grown to a size and the demand is there for me to, like, I just need to do other things outside of packing. I'm not saying the packing is something that's below me. If I need to pack, then I need to pack. But for me to grow this business, I can't be doing this anymore. And so, but for the foreseeable future, as in like this, in the entire 2025, I'm still going to be packing. I'm still going to be QCing every single one of the units, but I am going to move things a little bit so that it's more of an efficient process. Nonetheless, that's how the plastic Triton V2s came about. And I didn't know how to sell these. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to come up with a wholesale price list. I didn't know how much we should charge. I didn't know how much we should charge our distribution partners. And this is where Sasha from Ona Coffee came in to help. Sasha was an incredible help. He gave me so many pieces of tips and insight into how this industry works and how I should price things. And he had just been incredibly generous and kind all throughout the process. And so, yeah, shout out to you, Sasha. I doubt that you'll watch this, but anyway, Sasha's busy growing coffee in Fiji. Nonetheless, yeah, it wasn't, if it weren't for the help of those who cared about what I was doing and was interested in what I was doing, Sam Cora, Kyle Ramage, so many people, Anita over at Slowport Supply, Ply over at Rogue Wave Coffee, so many people that were interested and supported this project early on and up to this date. If it weren't for you guys, UFO Dripper wouldn't exist. And then ceramic drippers came about, which, again, so many people told me that it's not going to be possible to make ceramic drippers here in Korea. So funny because it's so many people told me no. So many people told me no. So many people told me, again, that I didn't have enough money. But I made it happen. And so the ceramic UFO comes out. Again, I'm hand QCing and hand packing every single one of the orders. And then Kenzie requested that he leaves the business. He requested that he wanted to pursue other things. And so, of course, I was very happy for Kenzie, and Kenzie had left. So I bought Kenzie's shares of the business, and now UFO Dripper is entirely mine. It has been since May-ish. Yeah. And it feels right. It feels right. And it feels really, really good. It's gotten even more lonely now that it's just me by myself. Because before I had Kenzie to kind of discuss business ideas with, share some of the wins, the small wins that we'd had, the losses we'd had. But yeah, it's even more lonely now. But it's a path that I had chosen, and it's a path that I'm going to continue to walk. It's something that I'm truly, genuinely passionate about, and it's something that I'm going to continue to grow the way that I've grown it thus far. And yeah, that's inception and a very, 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 very fast forwarded version of how UFO Dripper came to be what it is now. I am going to create new products. There are new products that are already in development, and I can't wait to share more of the new projects with you guys. There's some really, really exciting things happening that will launch probably early 2026. But yeah, I know a lot of you are curious about the UFO Dripper story, and so here it is. And with that, I want to share a little bit of my thoughts that I've had. And I see this a lot in the world where people have big ambitions, but they don't take the actions required to get to their ambitions and to really realize the ambitions. And so I want to define what ambition is. Ambition is when you yourself take yourself from a place where you are at to a place where you want to be. Entitlement is when you expect somebody else to take you from where you are to where you want to be. And I wrote this in my journals. If there's a cause you believe in, if there's a goal that you wish to achieve, if there's a thing you wish to have, you have to take yourself there. Nobody else. You have to take yourself there. You have to get there. If you're crying about the thing that you wish for not happening, then that makes you an entitled person. Whether it's a thing, whether it's an object that you wish to have, whether it's a movement in the world that you wish to see, you must be the catalyst that takes the action and that creates that specific change that you wish to see. And I heard this recently. When it comes to desiring a life, looking at what is it that I want, you need to be very, very careful about what the process is in order to get the outcome that you want. Because if you want the outcome but aren't prepared to live the life required to get it, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. And what a true statement that is. Because entrepreneurship is not easy. Entrepreneurship is not fun all the time. It's very, very, very lonely. It's very, very, very hard. And this podcast, this series is not only for you all to watch and listen to, but it's also for my future self. And it's also for my future children, for my future wife, for generations to come. I want this to exist for when the time comes. Either my legacy is something that's big enough for a lot more of you to want to discuss about or see the early stages of. I want to document this. I want the early stages of UFO Dripper. I want the early stages of J. Kim to be out there in the world for me to look back on, because I think it'll be so fun to see the things that I did, the prices that I paid to get to where I am and will be in the future. Entrepreneurship is not easy. If there's something that you wish to pursue, please know that for a long while, there will be only you in the crowd that's going to be clapping. It's going to be a very quiet and lonely clap. Sure, there's going to be some people that root for you. Sure, there's going to be some people on the sidelines that are watching you. But in the end, it's going to be a slow, quiet clap for your own self for a really long while. And I'm willing to embrace that, and I have embraced that. And if there's something that you really wish to have, if there's something that you really wish to achieve, please understand what it is that you're going to have to do for you to get there. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if this was entertaining to you. I really appreciate you being here. Much love. Till next time. Deuces.